Welcome to Impact. I'm Philip Morris from Proctors, your interviewer. And today our guest is Chris Trombley. Chris Trombley, trombone, I guess he used to play it. Chris is the owner of John Keel Music and Hermes Music in Schenectady. Chris, welcome.
Well, thank you.
So John Keel Music, this is all you've done.
This is all I've done my entire life. I was substitute teaching and I met the representative from the company who was calling in the school back in 1984, and he recommended me for a position there, and I've been there ever since.
So what is John Keel Music? Is that a music store?
John Keel Music is a music store that focuses on educational music, and we coordinate with public and private schools to supply instruments to get as many students starting music as possible. Trombones, trumpets, violins, basically the band and orchestra instruments that school programs start with.
So is the music instrument rental business the biggest part of what you do?
It absolutely is, yes.
Yeah, well, and you recently bought Hermes.
Yes, I did.
Which is an institution.
It is. For many years, John Keel was the Albany store and Hermes was the Schenectady store. And John Keel Sr. and Hermie Frederick, Norman's father, would occasionally get together and trade off music that one couldn't sell and talk about business. But they were friendly competitors back in the 1950s and 40s.
Well, so much, the consolidation of so many things has happened, but it's not a dissimilar story, your acquisition of Hermes, to what happened with Van Curler Music.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Rebuying
right.
What was a family divide in the
divided in a very long time ago for them.
Yeah, now they're one story. Well, it's got very, very cool. Go on.
So we're very happy to be near Van Curler because that's one part of the business we don't do, and we try to support them as much as possible and send people to get music from them. Sheet music is not a part of the business that we carry, and we do deliveries for Van Curler.
So what's the range of schools? How far do you
we go up as far north as, we were up in Plattsburgh last week, we go down to Wappingers Falls, we go out as far as Utica, and we go into Connecticut and Vermont and Massachusetts.
So how many other, in this area with the acquisition of Hermes, do you have a competitor?
Oh, there are competitors, yes.
Is this the kind of thing that's nationalized?
Well, that's who my competitors are. My competitors are generally people that have franchised with a national organization. They might be a small business that then signs on to represent one of the large national companies. And that's what I'm striving to do, is to keep a strong local company here in the Capital District. Even though I am now Hermes and John Keel, we're local. We get the instruments, we buy them ourselves, we maintain them ourselves, and we're a local company that then works out a comfortable day's drive from the Capital District.
And Hermes is moving.
Yes, we're very excited about this. We're moving. We're going to be your neighbor right down the street. We're going to be at 163 J Street. And we decided to make this move about mid-year. It's such a wonderful arts community down here, and we think it's going to be a good fit. We'd also like to do things with some performances out in front of the building, and maybe even we have a spot in the space where there's a little stage, and we might be able to do some small acoustic
that's great.
Music in there.
And there's a long history of our Thursday noon Jazz J events.
Yes,
it's a long history.
We are hoping to be open for this next Jazz on J.
Oh, wow,
That's
great.
Our goal.
That'd be fabulous. So tell me, you expected this? You went to Ithaca for music, I presume?
Yeah, I went to school for music, and I was music education. And the first time I got in front of a bunch of little kids playing instruments, I decided, I love kids, I love music, and I decided if I did this for my life, I might hate them both. So I shifted into a BFA and floated a bit for a year and freelance taught, as I called it, substituting in a number of different districts. And then I wound up in this industry, and I came into it a little bit struggling at first, thinking, I don't want to do this, and I'll move on to something else, but I need a job. And then I became quite passionate about what we do, because I feel we partner with schools, we partner with educational institutions, and we do a lot to support the programs.
Yeah. Do you do any instruction at John Keel's side?
We do it. We do instruction paired up with the Katie School of Music at John Keel, and we do instruction here. We'll do instruction on J Street with our own teachers.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. And so, 30 years of doing this, what have you observed? have you observed about schools, kids, the region?
Well, I think the region is very strong. We have wonderful arts organizations around here, and that, I think, keeps the school programs going. There are always cuts in school programs, but the core seems to stay in place here. And I attribute that to the presence of Proctors, to the presence of SEO, to the presence of very strong music organizations that stop communities from fully cutting a program, and they keep them in place. I have noticed over the years that everybody worries about things being shut down, and I have seen some programs get smaller and grow back. I've seen a lot of fluctuation. I'm not a prophet of doom, I'm a prophet of optimism, because I do believe the arts are very strong here, and even though we see difficult times with money and funding, I believe that we're going to see things bounce back.
Well, what I always say to my staff is, being an arts administrator is a continuous opportunity for hope.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, owning a music store is the same way.
And I'm sure owning a sheet music store is the same way.
Very much.
I'm curious, Chris, where do you imagine music education going in the next 20 years? So much education has changed and not changed, right? It's both changed and not changed. Here we have universities that are doing online education for everything imaginable. And yet we have public school systems that look almost the same way they looked when you and I were graduates. Mm-hmm. Right? So how do you see this?
Well, I see it being a little more inclusive. We have seen traditional programs that have always been band and orchestra instruments, and we see more with exposure trying to reach more students who might not choose those instruments with a guitar class, or working with a jazz class or an improvisation class or an electronic music studio. So I see more of that coming into education. I don't see the core, the traditional band and orchestra disappearing, but I see it being added on to. And I see a lot of music programs embracing that and bringing in other aspects, whether it's the technical aspect of music that's coming into it and recording studios in schools. You see more and more of that. And I think for the young kids, which is really our forte, the elementary kids, as we see the more and more development tied to music education and more studies showing that how it's part of a well-rounded education, how music helps support math, supports reading, supports language. As we see more and more of that, I think that it will continue to be a strong core, but I think we'll see branching out into more contemporary forms of music.
So I'm going to ask a tough question, or a politically charged one potentially. The urban schools, Troy, Schenectady, Albany, as engaged?
Well, I think yes. Yeah, I do. I think they suffer from funding. I mean, a big suburban school is going to have enough money to put in a recording studio as part of their music program. That's never going to, well, not never, but that's going to take a lot of grants and a lot of work to happen in an inner city school. They have very few resources. They have some very dedicated teachers, but they're working with limited resources. So they count on outreach from the SEO program. We work with the Albany Symphony the Vanguard program to repair instruments and help get some instruments into the schools for the inner city schools.
Is done with Schenectady's
absolutely.
Instruments for schools program. I forgot what we call it now.
Yeah, we do a lot of that. I think they're just as engaged and just as interested. They just don't have the resources, which is why we see a lot more outreach from other programs. And I think our outreach needs to go to the inner city because they just don't have the funding.
You know about El Sistema in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
Can you imagine an El Sistema program happening here?
I could see it happening. I haven't heard from her, but I spoke with a woman last summer in the Berkshires about attempting to do a similar program right in downtown Pittsfield. I'm not sure how that has come forward, but I think that could work in a city program.
Yeah, well, very interesting. Well, that'd be
your
wonderful. Participation would be critical.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
I'm thrilled to have you as our neighbor. I think it's absolutely spectacular.
Well, we couldn't be more excited.
Great for our downtown, so thank you. Our guest was Chris Trombley from John Keel Music and Hermes Music. We're delighted to have him as our neighbor, and thank you for joining us. I'm Philip Morris. I did Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.